Hi guys, so this is our first lesson in our Bible study. We are doing the workbook. I know it's backwards. We will not be silenced. And with the book that goes with it is We Will Not Be Silenced. So this first chapter is really more of a overview of what the latter chapters will be with some different things in it. And so I'm going to try to briefly go through it. It's a lot, but again, like I said, throughout it tells me at a later chapter. So without going through too much, because you really need to buy the book and the workbook. I mean, it's amazing. So I just wanted to start off with a prayer and just like be thankful for what we're doing today. Dear Jesus, thank you for everything that you give us and everything that you do. Please be with the speaker, sins are many, and just help your word flow through her so that other families can be truth-filled and know you, Jesus, and just know your greatness and help our children grow in you. In Jesus' name, amen. So we will not be silenced. So I went through and I have a lot of things highlighted, and I'm just going to kind of do some highlights. Let me just first start off with the beginning where it talks about really just the beginning of the book. And I want you to understand that Jesus knew this was coming. Jesus knew there'd be a time like this. And there were times like this throughout history as well. So he chose to give us a warning about what's happening. He says in Luke 13:24-25, he says, strive to enter through a lot of people will strive to enter through this narrow door. For many, I will tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able to. When once the master of the house has risen and shut the door, and you begin to stand outside and knock on the door, saying, Lord, open to us, and he will answer to you, I do not know where you come from. God knew that there's this tiny door that we can go through, but we are trying to make this door really big, right? So like trying to include everybody. Okay, well, this is the biblical truth. But wait, we have to change because of the culture? Okay, sure. So now this is the biblical truth. And no, we're trying to fit it in and it's not working. So anyways, that's kind of what it starts with. But it also discusses like how we got here. So chapter 1, that's what we're on, how we got here. So the secular left does not believe that America can be fixed. It must be destroyed. And part of that is dismantling the American Judeo Christian past, in filling that gap with different things. In 1917, Karl Marx was kind of introduced, and on page 21, you can kind of read about it. It talks about the theory of state supremacy. And what he did is he thought that there should be social controls and imposed those on Russia after the revolution in 1917. His goal is a great goal, right? We don't want poverty and we don't want inequality and we want justice. Totally great. Even if you fast forward to the women's movement in the 20s, it's also great, right? We don't want anybody to be oppressed or suppressed. So anyways, great things. However, it promises hope and change, income equality, racial harmony, and justice, but all that is based on secular values instead of the Judeo Christian morality. It is known for professing inclusion rather than exclusion and promoting sexual freedom rather than the view of restrictive sexual ethics that are in the Bible. So the cultural Marxists are seeking to capture 5 cultural institutions. And I have it here, but it's going to be backwards. I think so. Okay. So the first one is the 5 institutions are social, political, education, religious, and family. And so the first step to dismantling your institutions is to really dismantle the family. And it goes into the nuclear family, right? A father, a mother, and children. And what he started saying is that Judeo Christian values, they bred inequality and fed on greed and systemic oppression. So now I'm going to look at the workbook, and it asks, what did Karl Marx say it breeds inequality and systemic oppression? He's saying that that's what the Christian values do. And why? Because the children inherit wealth from their families or they inherit poverty, which that is something we definitely want to change. We don't want poverty to be inherited. That's why there's so many different levels of government help that anybody can give, plus the church gives. So I'll keep going. This is just definitely an overview. So the Marxists say that the Bible's teaching of marriage is actually multiple forms of oppression. So what's needed, and this was back in with the women's movement, and we'll get to that in a second, you had to have a feminine ferment, which is upheaval. So mothers had to leave their children for others to raise. That had to happen, because if we have a mother and a father, and the father works outside the home and the mother doesn't, she raises the children. All of that was based on biblical values, right? And they then teach them biblical values, and then it goes on and on. Well, if we say that this woman is oppressed, then that woman says, I want to work, and then they go to work. Well, someone's got to teach the kids. Oh, well, here we have free government education to teach the kids. They're not teaching them what you would have taught them, but they're teaching them the secular values. So, like if we say, I'm going back here. Let's see. So mothers joining the workforce, that the children must then attend state-sponsored daycare centers and schools. And they're going to be taught the errors of creationism, the church, and of course the Bible. Children will then be indoctrinated about the evils of capitalism and the benefits of socialism and social economic equality. You've now dismantled the family, and now you're kind of going to education. So again, this is like an overview. I'm going to skip some things, but basically, Marxism proposes that the government take permanent control of the economy and provide financial security from cradle to grave. Hence, in the last 10 years, I guess, it's been more about free pre-K. So like I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and so it's pre-K for SA. And it's very important, right? It's not just that we send our kids at 5, we follow the rules, send them at 5 to kindergarten. Now we need to send them at 4. We need to send them at 3. And then the next thing is going to be free daycare for all, which I think they actually have through different programs. So what that means is they're saying that they're proposing a government planned economy, and in the end says that states' rights should supplant God-given rights. That's what it comes down to, right? So that's Marxism. There are no God-given rights. It's all the state's rights. So the state owns everything and is so amazing that they will give you some things. And then everyone's equal. And that kind of goes into the next part, which is oppression is the key to history. Only victimhood will then make people willing to break out of the Judeo Christian past and enter the Marxist ideal where everyone is equal. We're going to reject restrictive traditional rules and prove their equality, and thus women going out into the workforce. Again, there's a lot of things that have been wrong in history, right? And there's great things about women working outside the home. That's not what anybody's saying. It's just saying that I'm just showing you what the reasons, and I'm not showing you, it's through this book, but showing you that the reasons for women working outside the home or having equality are not really good. It's all about changing how we parent our children. I'm going to kind of go back a little bit more. Keep going. So for instance, like Black Lives Matter. Yes, all lives matter. All Black lives matter. That's very true. And I'm going to do a post through Truth-Filled Families at a later date about Black Lives Matter. But basically, I'm just going to read you a little bit. And it talks about that that organization is fueled in Marxist ideologies. For example, on their own website, okay, Black Lives Matter website, it says, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as an extended family and villages that collectively care for one another. And we foster a queer affirming network. Okay, so like that's it's like in black and white right there. It's saying, hey, your biblical viewpoint of how a family is structured is wrong. Your biblical viewpoint of how an economics is structured is not good. We are going to have villages, we're going to have networks, and it's going to be beautiful, and we're supporting each other, and you can be whatever you want to be, and that's it. So there's lots of things about that. So, okay, we'll go into that later. And they go into that later in different chapters. And what that happens is it becomes like a circular movement. So you have like, out of wedlock children become less likely to be devoted to the home. and their parents and church. And so now then they're going to have more children that aren't devoted to the home or to church, and it goes like this. So then you're missing, and then they're all going to public education. So no one is learning about God. From these basic premises, feminism flourished, as well as abortion, the sexual revolution, homosexual marriages, and more recently, transgender euphoria. I'm going to read you this. This is insane. Incredibly, in 1969, Judy Smith, a member of the Students for a Democratic Society, predicted our future when she wrote, "We in women's liberation deny any inherent differences between men and women." This is 1969. There's no difference between men and women. All of us are trapped by the society that created our roles. We are questioning the ideals of marriage and motherhood. And so she's thinking that we were oppressed by society, but we were not, right, if you look at the biblical perspective. So let me go, if I can change to going more into the workbook. Deuteronomy 6:4-7 says that parents are to discuss that the Lord is God and to love God. Like, that is what we're supposed to do for our children. God is love God. And we are called to talk to them about him daily, at home, while out of the home, and at bedtime daily. When you dismantle the family and it's in chaos, like in that circular movement, you're not going to have that happening. And that's one of the goals. Ephesians 6:1-4 says, "Obey your parents, honor your parents. Fathers, do not frustrate your children, but train them in the Lord." Right? If we're going to have out of wedlock all the time, which has happened because the family is no more, right? Fatherhood is not looked at as something that's needed. They are the arbitrators of training up the children. And they're saying, like, do that. Of course, women as well. But anyways, I'm going to keep going. So oppression is the key to history. I kind of went backwards a little bit. So one of the questions is, what do the following Bible passages tell us about the source and nature of humanity's problems? So the source of humanity's problems, according to like Black Lives Matter or Judy in 1969, is that we've been taught by society that we are in this certain category. That is not true, first of all, but also what the biblical source of our humanity's problems is that in Romans 3:10-12 says, sin is what creates these problems, and that no one is righteous. All seem to have turned away and become godless. We are all flawed. Only Christ can fix us. So we can't, Black Lives Matter can't fix us. Judy can't fix us. All these things can't fix us because we are inherently sinful. Also, another one, Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond a cure." So we don't have the cure. Only God does. Another one is, okay. Is it possible for humanity to resolve our sinful nature apart from Christ? No. Christ's selfless act sanctifies all who believe. So the wages of sin is death, and the gift of God, which is Jesus, equals eternal life. Okay, here we go. But again, if you have broken away society, you've broken away the familial, the biblical family mode of how it should be, then you don't have anybody telling you what it should be like. All right, next page. This is a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to go as fast as possible. What can we learn about equality, right? So Judy in 1969, fast forward to today, 2022, it is almost the same thing, right? She did tell our future. There is no difference between man and woman. That is utter nonsense. It is not biblical. It's not even scientific. Like that it doesn't make any sense. But one thing that the Bible does tell us about equality, in Galatians 3:26-29, it talks about that we are all equal when we are baptized or saved through Christ, because we are all under him. We become, and at that time, they're really talking about Jews and Gentiles, which you can look more into, but we are all equal under Jesus and under his salvation. So that is amazing. In Romans 12:10, it says, "Be devoted to one another. In love, honor one another before yourselves." This is discussing about meeting other people's needs versus our own. So Christians, yes, believe that we need to help other people. And BLM believes that. We just do it differently. And our inherent need or want or the reasoning for it is totally different. We're going to help people because of Christ's love in us and our need to love others and our wants and needs in us with the Holy Spirit to help other people. I'm going to just kind of go, I'm going to keep going. What can we learn from following verses about God's kind of justice? So God has justice, right? In Psalm 37, 27 through 29, he says, he will reward the faithful stewards. Turn from evil and do good. And he will destroy the wicked, and the righteous, or the baptized, are the ones who are saved and will inherit the earth. That's a paraphrase. So I paraphrase the verse. But God's kind of justice is not, hey, I'm a woman and you're a man. It's also confusing, right? Because you have the women's movement, so there are women, to today, but there aren't women. It's very confusing. Thus, if you invoke chaos and you have no biblical framework to go back to, that is very scary, and then you're very confused. But God is the one who will be just. He's the arbitrator of justice, not us. Psalm 106:3 said, "Blessed are those who act justly, who always do what is right." We try to do what is right all the time, right? I'm going to keep going. I could say so many more things. I'm just trying to get through this first one. Again, this first chapter is more of an overview. Then goes into the media and that they are leading our culture. So briefly, it asks for some examples, right? About how is media influencing today's culture. I'm just going to tell you three things recently. Buzz Lightyear. Okay. Not only is there a 2-second kiss that everybody says we should not be upset about, but really during the movie, which I have not seen, this is from another Christian family that accidentally took their children there and said that this is insane. One of the main characters is a lesbian, and it is kind of pushed in the face, saying there's another character asking the woman about her wife, like, oh, your wife, oh, she. Again, which is so odd because in the same sense, right, in the same exact time period in 2022, we're being told that their pronouns matter and that there are no girls. So it's very confusing. But so it's pushed down the throats in a movie theater. Also Baymax. I don't know if you've already heard this. I put it out on Truth-Filled Families. Maybe not. I will. Baymax is in a store looking for pads and tampons. I'm assuming for he's in charge of someone. We don't know much more about it yet. But in the real Baymax show, it's a boy, so that can be confusing. But anyways, he's in a store and he's looking for tampons and pads. All these people are saying, this is the one I use. This is the one I use. A dad then comes out right here and says, this is the one that I get for my daughter, right? So now we know that is a man, but he's searching for his daughter. But then there's also a transgender male. So it's a female who is transgender into a male. So this woman looks like a boy because she has short hair, dresses kind of manly, and has a transgender flag on their shirt. That person says, I use these. But if I'm a kid, you don't look like a woman because she's not. She's dressed up like a man. Very confusing. But anyways, that's just another tidbit in the media for our children. And then lastly, I actually learned this last night when we were doing our workbook. Thor, the movie Thor, which I would not take my kids to see anyways, is there's different references to men being able to have babies. So I'll leave that there. And we'll probably keep going with that later as well. So then it goes into the silent church. And that's like really the reason he wrote this book is what he says. And I really love what he says. He says, and I didn't even go into the women's movement. Hopefully we'll get there later. But the silent church, he said that, throughout, and I think he's talking about like throughout these last decades is the church has been afraid of being canceled. And that's like a new term we use. But, he says, and I'm quoting him, to our shame, we are afraid of the secular left. This is on page 34. We fear being misquoted by the press, vilified by the special interest groups, and threatened by the radicals. There is no joy in being called racist, hateful, bigoted, homophobic, and accused of imposing our religious views on others. So what he's saying is throughout these many decades, we have been silent. But now is the time we need to not be silent anymore. It's too much. we want to be nice, welcoming, grace-centered. And if not, we will be called haters, grace deniers, and legalistic. So we retreat into silence. He said, never before have I felt so much like Jehoshaphat, who called a fast when several vicious armies united and came against Israel. So we can look at that later. You can also look at 2 Chronicles 20:12. However, we are more ready than we realize to represent Christ in our fragmenting culture. Our eyes are upon you. So he talks about that we need to not be silent. But how do you do that? How do you live courageously in a culture where the people who shout the loudest win the argument? That's the purpose of this book, is he's asking these questions. This is on page 36, I write not so much to reclaim the culture as to reclaim the church. So he wants to inspire the church to courageously stand against the pressures of our culture that seek to compromise our message and silence our witness. He wrote this church so that we must interact with groups and individuals, giving a reason for hope that is within us and doing it with gentleness and respect. That is also important. Truth-filled families and myself, I've always tried to be myself, being the more in the past, and now Truth-filled families going forward is being Christ to others and showing them the truth, but with discernment and grace. You can love everyone, but not approve of what how they're behaving in any respect, okay? Not just what's out there right now. But he also wrote this book to strengthen what remains, as Jesus told the church in Sardis. That's in Revelations 3:2. I write this book so that families will know that their children are facing in public schools, colleges, and in the broader culture. I write this book with the hope that we will remain strong and joyfully defend the faith that we once for all delivered to the saints. That was Jude 3. We must separate the truth from false and reality from desire-driven delusions. I think that's kind of what I was getting at a second ago, is that you do it with discernment, but we have to. Like, when people say, and you'll look at all these other people talking, and it's like, why do you, the people that don't care about this, that aren't Christian, and they're like, why do you care if they want a they pronoun, or if he wants to be a she? And it's like, because we need to discern true from false and reality from desire-driven delusions. It's so important. And he says, this is a Daniel moment when we call on God, confessing our sins and the sins of our churches and the nation. So that is why. And he goes further, and there's more in this book, and he talks about the layout and the language of the book, the radical left, what radical secularists are, and he goes into that. And so then it goes to chapter 2. So, but he ends it on this, and this is on page 40. He says, let us hear the words from the Lord to Joshua. All right, and I want this to kind of go into you, and you think about this and pray about it. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. And so this is kind of, again, this is a big overview of chapter 1. The workbook is amazing, and there's all these places for you to write your own things. Look, I haven't even done that part yet because I was just preparing, but this is great. Look, it says committing yourself to action. Like, get this workbook. This is going to help you understand the process of what we're up against and how to do things differently. The family is under attack today as never before, and is one of the major pillars to a strong society. If you destroy the family, society crumbles. What are you gonna do to protect the family? What are you gonna do? I know what I started to do. I formed truth-filled families, because I just need to get the truth out there. So, and then you do what you will with it, whatever that means. I'm just giving you resources. And then also, I love this. It says, committing yourself to prayer. Upon completing this lesson, what 5 things do you desire to make a matter of prayer right now? And list them. And lastly, he gives Psalm 27:1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? So, chapter 1, if you don't already have this, get it. This is so amazing. And we'll go from there. So next Thursday, I'm going to have chapter 2. Please have your books by then, because I cannot go through all of it. It's almost impossible. But we can do it together. And you can also post questions here, and then I can look up what I would think. I can talk to pastors. You can talk to pastors. We're all in this together. This is just another resource. But anyways, thank you so much for our first ever Bible study. Chapter 1, We Will Not Be Silenced by Erwin Lutzer, the workbook and the book. Please go to christianbook.com to buy it. That's where I bought it. There is a shipping fee, but we haven't gotten to it yet. But if you can support Christians over secular businesses like Amazon, which does have free shipping, then do it. Like that's what we should do. $5 is a small price to pay to give more money or financial contributions to a company that has your values. So doesn't mean, and again, this is later in the study, it does not mean that you maybe boycott everything. You can if you want, but if you're not called to do that, that's okay too. Anyways, okay, good luck. See you guys next week. Thanks. Bye.